Shawn Bolz, welcome. Oh my goodness. We told Shawn just a minute ago, this is really better for us than meeting the president.
I mean, we got through all the fangirling before we started, so y'all don't have to hear us acting like a bunch of cheerleaders for Shawn Bolz. So welcome.
I had words of affirmation overload. It's not even my primary love language, and I still enjoyed it.
Oh my gosh. Well, we are so honored.
Yeah,
we love
thank you.
you. We love Cherie. I mean, y'all are just such a dynamic duo. In fact, I was listening to the podcast on my drive to Birmingham this past weekend, and just when Cherie interviewed you, and I was like,
I know, that was
love her.
really neat.
I so just want to be her friend in the garden. And she has an amazing Instagram that I love to follow. And I mean, I love how her heart is to grow. It's to grow people and grow love. And
I love that.
for your girls, you are just one in a million. And God has clearly put you in our path for a reason. It's just such a gift. So give us a little background for people who don't know you, Shawn. Give us a little background of how you came to live in LA and just your story of learning God's love and your love for people.
Well, my parents were first generation Christians, so they got saved out of kind of hard homes. And especially my mom, it was a hard home. And my dad went straight into the military. He got drafted, and he's a colonel in the Air Force now. And they just had these careers, but they had a son before me. They had my sister, my brother, my sister, and then I. So before my sister, my next sister up was born and I was born, they had a son that died of cancer and leukemia.
Wow.
And it was so traumatic to them. And they ended up having an angelic visitation in the hospital room.
Wow.
And they went to their Catholic priest to try and figure out what this was, because this woman comforted them in a supernatural way with the presence of God. And they knew it was God, but they didn't have language or theology.
Wow.
And so they ended up getting saved. And when they got saved, shortly after, they were involved with charismatic Catholic healing ministry and all these things.
Wow.
And they got stationed in the West Coast. That was in Alabama. They got stationed in Orange County. And it was right when the Jesus People movement broke out.
Yeah.
And at that point, Jennifer and I were born. And they ended up meeting John Wimber, who was the pastor of a church called the Vineyard, which was ended up becoming a movement. And so they had these roots, which was like this church movement that was known for their worship, and anybody could be a pastor. You didn't have to go to theology school. It's kind of a little shady at times, but also really amazing. Yeah. But the Jesus People movement came out of that and Calvary Chapel. And I mean, there was like 18 million people saved in just the Southern California region.
Wow.
And my parents, we got to see that. Like I grew up in that. And then when I was a teenager, I wanted to see, because my parents loved the church so much, they kind of ran from the world. I wanted to see if what we were learning and what we'd experienced that would happen in these meetings, if it would happen like with the poor or in a red light district or in a marginalized people group or somewhere where the church felt like no permission to go. Like the church was terrified of Hollywood and of video games and of all these things. So when I was a teenager, I was like, God, I need to know your love works everywhere. Yeah. And the same things that we're seeing in this meeting happen anyplace else. So I just started going kind of one trip at a time. I was a teenager. I'd raise money and go on mission trips by myself where there was no missionaries. And we went to I remember going when the Berlin Wall fell to see what was happening, crazy stuff, like to see if God would show up. And I'm not an evangelist. I'm not somebody I don't like going out on the street and talking to people and praying for. I'm very introverted. So, but I did. I just was like, if you're real and I'm going to give my life for this, I need to see that your love will work beyond people who are in the religious institution. And he showed up big time.
Wow.
So, and at that point we needed to hear God. Like it wasn't an option. It wasn't like you get to places like a dump in Tijuana or something. And it's like, you give relief supplies, but you had to give more. You had to give something beyond relief. And so we did the relief supply thing all over, but we also were like, these are God's precious people. And we would have before and after moments where his spirit would come on us and we would speak to people things that were the secrets of their heart, things that nobody would know. Yes. And I had some really good mentors at the time who were moving in a lot of this kind of supernatural, spiritual, fivefold ministry gifts, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And, but we were so not connected to there wasn't a lot of conferences at the time. There wasn't a lot of things. We just were trying to love people.
Yeah.
So I was so ruined by it. And I was going to go to Los Angeles for arts degree, and I was going to do performing arts. And when I was graduating high school, I had a prophetic word from a lady who I just was the least likely person to ever give me a word. She said, you're going to go to Kansas City and be part of the prophetic ministry there. And I heard that word prophetic. I was like, those people are crazy and they have issues. And I kind of like them from afar,
Famous
but I'm not going to go there.
Words.
And Kansas City, like, why would I ever? I'm in LA again. Why would I ever move to Kansas City? I hated the Midwest. I was like, I love where you guys live, but not like the Midwest.
Sorry to
And
all
so
of you from
I was like, there's no way.
Wisconsin.
Y'all, I moved there for 12 years. I moved there for a long time.
You were in
And right when I got there was kind of a breakdown in a lot of the ministry that had happened out of this church.
Mhm.
It was called Metro Vineyard Fellowship. There's a lot of breakdown. There were a lot of accusation against them, a lot of failed ministries, that kind of thing. So I moved there and I was like, if I'm moving here to live. I don't care where these people are at. If they're in a hard place, I'm going to make them happy because I'm not going to move to a desert, And so I just started teaching and sharing and giving away and really praying for people. And I didn't know I didn't know as prophetic. I didn't know it was going to be like, you are a prophetic minister. I just was like, you need a breakthrough in God because where you're at today will never lead you to where you're called to go.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I just
totally.
prayed in faith with people. And the people who were teaching at the Bible school on the spiritual gifts, they had a lot of charismatic Bible classes. They had all left. And one of the women who was in charge of that temporarily, she was teaching for a brother who was out of town. I ministered to her and she goes, I don't know what I'm doing in this class. Can you come teach us? And I'm like, sure. I've taught that for our youth group.
Wow.
And I go there. And by the second week, it's 200 people. By the third week, it's 400 people.
Wow.
So then the pastor's like, who are you and what are you doing? And I'm thinking I'm in trouble. And he's like, come travel with me. His name is Mike Bickle. Come travel with me.
Mike.
So I ended up, my first conference was like 7,000 people. And he gets me up after him and says, just do that thing where you pray for people. And I'm like, I don't do that thing. Like, I don't know. What thing is that? So I was thrown into it, into the ministry world. And I don't think I've had, maybe I have ego, but I don't think I have massive ego in ministry because it's never been my goal. My goal is just that.
Yeah. I think that's so obvious.
They can do it.
Yeah.
That everybody gets to do it. It's not, my life is unique and special, but it's not more unique and special than any other life. Even the street people I've worked with, I've had drug addicts live with me. I've had homeless live with me. I got grounded from bringing homeless people home in high school. I mean, like, that's who I've been. And so, I don't just minister around cool things or so successful things. I'm looking for what can God do for human trafficking victims, not just what can God do. But I'm totally a white middle-class guy who's raised I'm not like, you wouldn't expect me to show up at civil rights rallies with Christians and prophesying, but I do because I care about racial inequity because God cares, not the way that the extreme political view is right now, but in the way that God is saying, in my kingdom, there will be many wars and, tribe will rise up against tribe, but in my kingdom, there'll be unity. So I'm super, like, I think I'm just stupid enough to force cut my way through life to say, God's real. Where can he show up? And I'll just show up too.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to some girlfriends who were over earlier today and talking about, I think what's unique about you, I think a lot of pastors come from like some kind of a broken past. I mean, certainly with me, I have, kind of the broken road story. And yet you grew up with these great parents that were great role models to you. And so you didn't have to like figure out the father heart thing of God is what I've heard you kind of talk about. And that is, to me, what I hear when I hear from you is what just comes out of you is what you've experienced in your own life. Would you say would you speak a little bit into that?
Yeah, I do think that like a lot of the generations who kind of broken into new grounds of ministry, they were really broken people themselves. And inner healing therapy, these kinds of things were a bad word up until recently.
Yeah.
Like if you had to go to a counselor 10 years ago, they'd look at you like, what is wrong? You must be ending. And now everybody has a therapist, like they have a trainer. It's not a big deal. But in the days of like when a lot of things were emerging, new ideas and a reformation of the church again, we've gone through just as significant as a reformation in Christianity as Martin Luther brought the church back from Catholic to Protestantism. It's just not as obvious. I think our children's children will understand it, but I don't think we're understanding it. You had a lot of personalities emerge. A lot of people were, they were known by their title more than they were known by their fruit. And you had a lot of, a weird financial hyper prosperity gospel. You have a weird, and then you have a weird reaction to that where it's like, let's deconstruct our faith. All these things have happened. And for me, the answer has always been, because I grew up in a healthy family with they were getting healthy as we were going. But I mean, like my parents just like did their life for real in front of us. And I watched them change and get better and better and better. Like I watched them on their discipleship journey with Jesus. And so I knew if God's three main identities is number one, he's a father. Number two, he's a bridegroom. And number three, he's the head of a family. If those are the most important identities, then what we do in our families and at home is the most important way we can express our faith.
Yeah.
Because nuclear family and just family. And I'm not saying if you're divorced or you're not in a nuclear family, you won't experience this, but nuclear family is the way we were wired to see resolution. Because when you have grandparents and parents and children, and the children are learning from the grandparents' mistakes, and they're not going to repeat them because the grandparents are being vulnerable. Like when you have that, you actually have structure to where you keep building a legacy forward. And so I think you're exactly right that for me, the healthiness of life, going after holistic mental health, spiritual health, emotional health is so important to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing. How particularly have you done that, Shawn? Just with the prophetic knowledge, even for someone like you, I mean, you feel so healed, but yet we all have our stuff. I mean, I think it's like we look at people like you and we're like, well, he's got it all together.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like even with the prophetic, like what have you done? I mean, I'm just curious. Like,
I think the prophetic is a catalyst. We think of it as, when you think of a gift of the Holy Spirit, you think of it as like this awesome thing that's unattainable, because it's just almost like a superpower. But when you think about how God wired us, the Holy Spirit lives inside of us. So as soon as you get saved, there's going to be a time you can attribute to God showed you something you sinned in that you need to correct. And you would have never been that way before you were saved or before you invited God to walk with you. Or there's a time you gave money when you didn't really want to give money, but God showed you to give money and you knew it was God. Like we hear God all the time, but because we've marginalized it to conviction of sin or to resources, we don't really expect him to come and teach us how to have our inner world right. Like the way he designed us in our inner life is he's teaching us, gently nudging us towards John 10, the abundant inner life that then comes out of us with streams of living water. So for me, I grew up around a lot of dysfunctional ministry people, and I didn't want to be in ministry. So it was really hard for me because I'm like going, these people are a mess, like father issues and rejection issues and vying for attention, competition. And I showed up at 19 in Kansas City and I didn't even want the ministry. And I was put in a place that they all were vying for.
Right.
So then they're looking at me like, how did you get here? You must be sovereignly gifted and special. I'm like, no, y'all are just so messed up. They had to put someone here. And I'm, and so I was like finding counselors, people who do inner healing, people who do deliverance to come into our community. And it was controversial because people are like, we're not that broken. We don't need counselors. I'm like, we need like hundreds of counselors. It was a 5,000 member church.
Wow.
And I always advocated for that health, but I didn't really go on the greater journey of that until I was probably here in Los Angeles. God sent us to Los Angeles after being a part of that church and prayer movement. And he spoke to us about, I always thought I'd go to Africa. And God spoke to me really the most clearly I've ever heard him, other than some personal stuff. I said, I'm sending you to change culture from the culture capital of the world. I want you to go and be a father in culture and love on people. And so he sent us to Hollywood, and I never thought I would start a church. And then he spoke to me and said, how are you going to do this without creating a family? Like everything's birth and family. And so I'm homeless in Hollywood. Will you build me a home? So I did that for 10 years. And while I was doing that, my leaders, let alone my members, needed emotional support and mental health help.
Yeah.
And so like I started to bring counselors and sociologists, and I had staff members go through, like if somebody's marriage broke down, I wasn't even married at the time. I didn't think I was strong enough to fix it, which is the mistake most of us make, which if someone shares their problem with us, we may be the only person they ever share the problem with.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to get resolution, but it's embarrassing and hard. And so I recognize that and realize I have to resource people and help them to find solutions.
Yeah.
And so I brought a lot of people in and we talked very openly about depression and mental health issues, spiritual health issues, deliverance, how deliverance happens sometimes, but we couldn't expect deliverance for some things that are character, issues that we have to build through time. So we did a lot of that at the same time as releasing prophetic teams, healing teams, evangelism, going after human trafficking. And that church, who's now being led by my best friend, still has a great foundation of let's go after holistic Christianity, which is we have to be supernaturally normal. We have to have the supernatural love of God in us, but we have to be able to relate to anybody. And if I go somewhere and I'm dependent on my reputation or my spiritual gifting that's perceived by the people who know me to make a way for me, not Jesus's love, but something that I have to make a way for me in a new environment, then I have elitism, entitlement, and ego.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to talk to the person on the plane next to me without having any pretension. And they're as important, if not more important than I am. And so I need to look at them and be able to break it down, not based on who are you, what do you do, but actually like, who are we? Like, let's talk, let's like go somewhere. And so I had to learn emotional intelligence and self-awareness and these things. And I've read a lot of books, and I studied neurology and neurobiology for the last 10 years. So I'm the weirdest prophetic person because I care about spiritual and emotional health as one of the primary things I care about. But I also care that we see supernaturally God growing in us and we see ourselves growing in him.
Right.
And that's the measure, the way we track if we're being discipled or not.
Wow.
We don't just say,
sounds familiar.
we don't just say, well, I have knowledge now and I've been there, I've done that. But we actually say, I have changed. I know how to love more. I have seen his heart for people, and I have compassion I wouldn't have had without him. And I'm actually changed. My anger is now not the same level. I've actually grown in a way to process my anger. And therefore, if you see me at home, at work, at ministry, whatever you see me, I'm the same person.
Right.
And I don't have bursts of weirdness that come out because I've compartmentalized my life. So we've kind of imparted that to the people we've ministered and the people are people. So it's always messy, but it's like, I remember one time this famous prophet who everybody thought I lost my mind when I moved to LA. And this famous prophet, his name is Bob Jones, this old man. He was famous in the circles he was in. And I walk into a room of all these biggest generals of that movement, and they were all kind of in judgment towards me, like, you've lost your mind moving to LA. And Bob looks at me and he goes, oh, I see in this big, he's like seeing a vision. Yeah. I see in this big messy barn and there's poop everywhere. Just poop there and poop. And I'm like, oh no. Like he's going to rebuke me, And he goes, but when I look around at everybody else here, their barns are clean. He goes, what that means is that a lot of people have a lot of nothing going on, but you have so much new birth and new life that you're having to clean all the time. He goes, I'd much rather have a poopy barn with a lot of life than to have what a lot of these guys have. And he said it right in front of them. And I was like,
oh my God.
Stop, please.
That's awesome.
That's
so I learned to be comfortable with the mess.
Yeah. Well, you have to be. Yeah.
You
have to be. It's funny. You talk a lot of the same language as we do. We're all about just that wholeness and the healing. And even just, I was talking to somebody this past week about the Trinity. We think of it as this very theological concept as opposed to the fact that it's just the first family. And we're being invited into family and we're all learning. We know family is messy. It's like, why would we expect it to be any different? Being in the family of God is about working through the mess.
Yeah. Oh,
so just a little transition, because one of the things that was, I think, so life-altering for Rachel and I was we got to see you, Shawn, at a conference you did several years ago with Graham Cook. And it was the first time that we had ever really seen somebody using words of knowledge as kind of like, I saw it as like a gateway to the prophetic. So I kind of, it's like, it's kind of hard to sometimes distinguish what's prophetic, what's words of knowledge. Can you just, for our community, explain the difference between the two and how God has used those two different things to bring people into the family in a fresh new way?
I love that. When Paul talks about the spiritual gifts, he says there's healing and prophecy. And he actually says words of knowledge and words of wisdom. These two gifts are probably two of the most powerful ones to bring people instantly into realizing God's real around me right now. He knows me, but they're the least valued. A lot of people get prophecy, which is, maybe a vision. I see 3 ducks over your head, and it doesn't mean anything to them or one day in the future, this might happen. And that's cool. But they're wondering, does God care about me today?
Yeah.
Is the God of all the universe, who's everywhere all at once, supposedly, can he be here for me today? And words of wisdom and words of knowledge do that. Now, a word of knowledge is the word for the word of knowledge is the word basically that says a current or past circumstance or issue in someone's life and what God thinks about it. So it's not psychic information, just here's going on in your life. It's actually, what is God's perceptions over your family, your job, your weakness, whatever it is. And then a word of wisdom would be, what is God's thoughts for something that is a struggle that needs a solution in your life? Or what is God's frame for how he created you from the beginning of time? And I added that when you didn't ask me about that, because when somebody has an issue in their heart and you share with them, hey, God saw you yesterday. This is what you were wearing. This is what was happening in your life. And here's what he would say to that. They are like, oh my gosh, God is real.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot deny you. I've had atheists who are like, I've never believed in God my whole life, but that was uncanny.
Yeah.
And a word of wisdom is sometimes even more profound, though not as sensational, because a word of knowledge is like, wow, God was here. And we don't always see them on that. Even me, I don't see words of knowledge every day. That's someone's name and day. I go through flows. Like I'll go through 3 months of a time where it feels like it's all the time.
Wow.
And then I go through months where it's like, I'm contending for it.
Okay.
Even still this many years later, 20 whatever years later.
That's good to
That,
hear.
I'm
words
so
of-
refreshed
Me
by
too.
that.
Oh yeah.
we're
I think
always
the prophetic's
practicing.
like that.
I mean, even in a meeting, or if we're doing a Zoom with a group of
Oh,
20,
gosh.
like it'll be the first 10, I hear something so clear. And then the last 10, I'm like, I'm sorry.
Oh God, please.
I mean, you know,
can we
it's-
stop now? Sorry,
it's
we said we would
hard.
do
You're
this.
like, what's my favorite scripture? Okay. Job. No, Job's not good.
No, they all died. Not that one.
Yeah, no, but word of wisdom also helps people to feel like God's with them in the moment, which means
Yeah.
he's bringing solutions, resolution, connection to what they're currently caring about. And these two, when Paul talks about the revelation gifts in 1 Corinthians 14, he says, in verse 1, he says, go after love like your life depends on it. That's the
Yeah.
Message version. I love that version.
Oh, I love
And then
Uh-huh.
the second part of the
Wow.
scripture says, and eagerly pursue spiritual gifts, especially
Yeah.
that you may revelate,
prophesy.
or where we say prophesy, and
Yeah.
prophecy would be words of knowledge, words of wisdom, and prophecy itself,
Right.
which
Oh,
are the
wow.
prophetic gifts, which means, and then he says, what happens if you speak in tongues or you do other stuff? It's really for you. Like people don't
Right.
really get it. They're like,
Mhm.
it's your own spiritual language. But when you prophesy to somebody, the secrets of their hearts are laid bare and they know that I'm
Yeah.
real, and they'll
Yeah.
turn to me and repent, basically is what he's, Paul's saying for God. So I'm looking at that going, okay, I've been in a
Wow.
million circumstances, and that's exaggeration, but it's, so many circumstances where I'm with somebody, whether Christian or not, and God can resolve what would take 5 years of therapy, what would take 10 years of business coaching,
Yeah.
what would take a whole mindset change with finances. He can resolve it through one prophecy,
Yeah.
one word of knowledge, or one word of wisdom.
Can you get
And I'm like, we owe the world that love.
We do.
Yeah.
Oh, we so agree.
I would love to hear. Can you give them an example of, one time where it was just super meaningful to you that you saw just when you released that word, it just changed everything? I'm sure you have a bazillion examples, but something you could hone
Oh, I
in
mean, like,
on?
it's so funny because I was talking to earlier today, I was talking to a friend of mine who I met at one of our events in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest. And I just brought him and his wife up. I didn't know them. There was 1,300 people there. And I brought him and his wife because we're doing a training all day. And I was saying, okay, could you guys be the guinea pigs? They were just sitting somewhere up front. And we're all going to try and give words of knowledge to you. And they just felt safe. Like
Yeah.
if people missed it, they would be okay with it. Because
Mhm.
one of the things I found when you're doing words of knowledge, specifically trainings, is one of the most frustrating trainings you could do because everybody gets it wrong until they don't.
Yes.
Yes.
Everyone, it feels like a guessing game.
And you
like,
have to,
your
like-
name is it Sheila? Is it
Right.
Albert? Is it like, it's so funny. It's like they'll use boy names eventually because
Bob,
they're just
Karen.
desperate, And so we did a word of knowledge training, and I created a really safe atmosphere for it, but nobody got anything for this couple. And they were about to walk off the stage, and I grabbed them and go, just a minute, I'm going to pray for you. I had
Mhm.
nothing for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to pray for you. I was like, I'm seeing like God's going to give you a place of influence. It's not just, I feel like you're in ministry. Like, yeah, I'm not just your local ministry, but he's going to give you a place of influence. And this is now 3 years ago. You're going to make these like short videos, like 20-second videos and like 2-minute videos, and they're going to touch the world. You're going to have such a big influence, and God's going to give you virtual real estate and ministry, not just a natural real estate ministry. And you and your wife are going to have a message that's going to go far beyond where you could have ever gone without the virtual world or whatever. So, I mean, they have no idea. They have zero social media presence at all. They're not thinking about it. And then he started a YouTube series, and that was good. And called Bible Time. He's, teaching people about the Bible, and there's just local associate pastors at a church, young hip people. And then he starts on TikTok because TikTok became a thing during, the pandemic.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he would tell people, oh, wait, stay with me. Let's read this verse real fast. And he would explain the verse in 9 seconds.
Oh, wow.
You guys, 1,400,000 people started following him.
Yeah. In one day, I think, didn't you say he had got like 200,000 hits? in
200,000
a day
in one
or
day.
something? Yeah.
And so, and
What?
people are on this journey with Craig,
so
and it's
neat.
just, and again, Craig from Bible Time. And I love that moment because they were
Uh-huh.
in their spirit. There were these young people who were like, we know we're supposed to be influencers. Like this whole generation must be,
Yeah.
under 30 must be influencers. But like, what are we supposed to do for you, God? And God's like,
Yeah.
take what I've done in the hidden places of you studying the word
Yeah.
and just give people bite-sized pieces.
Mhm.
And after when they grew in that one day, that huge amount, Craig's wife said, this is what Shawn prophesied to us. And they went back and listened to it. And then they have kind of a prototype. They're like, this is where God's leading us. Like, and it's
Yeah.
turned into their world, their ministry.
Yeah,
They resigned from
wow.
the church and they're going this direction. So I think that would be like a more positional, like somebody gets into their destiny. One of my favorite ones where somebody just like needed to know God was there was this young girl who, was just going through a lot on the plane. I was sitting next to her. She's crying. She just was leaving her friend who had cancer and who she was
Oh.
sure was going to die. And her life just sounded miserable. She was told me a few things. And I was like, this is hard. And I remember just giving a destiny word to her is not going to help her because that's going to be 5 years from now. It's not going to be now. And I remember just looking at her and I was like, tell me about, what is your family there to support you? She's like, no, I'm kind of an orphan in a way. My dad, da, da, da. And I was like, God, there's no way that anything's going to happen in this moment unless you come. Otherwise, we're just having a really depressing conversation
Mhm.
that I'm having empathy. And it's probably nice for her to talk to somebody, but anybody could do this. But what can you do, God? Because I'm not smart enough to do anything in this circumstance. I remember just saying that, like, I have nothing. She's like 20 years old. I'm like in my 40s. I have nothing, God.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, did you have a dream about dying over and over and over when you were young and you thought you were going to die young? Wow. She's like, how do you know that?
Oh,
and I'm like,
gosh.
I literally just saw your dream. You think you're going to die before you're 30.
Oh my gosh, that just gave me chills.
She's like,
wow.
I know I'm going to die before I'm 30. I know it. I've had a dream my whole life. And I said, okay, you're going to have to borrow some belief from me right now. Suspend your unbelief because God has a plan for your life and he has a love for you as a father and he has a long life for you to have joy and get married and have kids and incredible things in your life. But this will not happen if you have this thing on you because you've come into agreement with a wrong voice and a wrong belief. This is not God. And I said, I want you to close your eyes. She did. And I said, I want you to ask God, not this, don't think of the dreams. Ask God, what do I look like when I'm 40?
Oh, nice.
Wow.
question.
She closes her eyes and she's like, I see myself alive at 40.
Wow.
I'm like, do you realize like you're going to let this dream steal from you? Because it will be a self-fulfilled prophecy.
Yeah.
You will die.
Yes.
And she's like, my mom died young and she had dreams like this. And my family my relatives told me. So she was like repeating it, I just remember like getting off the plane after I led her through all this prayer and stuff.
Yeah.
And I got off the plane and I thought, you are so amazing.
I know, right?
Because I'm not smart enough for this. And I wouldn't even want to do this. Like, I wouldn't even like, if you told me what we were going to do, I'd be like, send somebody else, God. But this young girl who just needed to come out of a death wish, just out of she's going through depression. She has anxiety, all this stuff. And God addresses some of the foundation of where it came from and how she starts to see, I am going to get married. I do want to get married. I do want to have kids. For the first time, she said, I've never wanted to be married or have kids until this moment.
Wow.
Because I've come from so much bad examples of what marriage is and what kids can be. It's like, it just feels, she goes, I see myself at 40 having kids and being married. I want that life.
Wow. Shawn, it's so
and I said, it'll only come through God.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So it's so fascinating. Like a person like that, like, do you like lead them? Obviously you got her to vision herself at 40, but did she know God or was she like did she grow
she had
up?
zero foundation. She'd never been to Sunday school. So she knew Jesus because she'd seen a trailer for the Passion of Christ.
Oh,
and someone told her that was the real Jesus, that was what he was like. So she kind of asked them about it. And so she knew Jesus died on the cross, but that was it.
So
I'm like, I had to start from basics
and
I knew I couldn't get very far in the first conversation with her.
Sure.
So I gave her my phone number. What was cool is that she ended up going to church with a friend. I didn't have to, I'm almost like a foster. I feel like a lot of times we're afraid to be a foster parent, but I've been a real foster parent. And a foster parent knows I'm not this kid's permanent parent. They're borrowing me for 1 month to 2 years, right? Sometimes a day. And I'm going to be the best parent they've had in that moment so that they can feel branded by love. And if I never see them again, it's okay. Because I'm not responsible to really be their parent. I didn't birth them and I can't adopt them because they're not adoptable because they're in the system, but I can love them well. And I feel like a lot of times when it's not at our local church, it's not in the ministry we're involved with, it's not our business, it's not in our family. And we have these one-offs with strangers. Sometimes we feel a false responsibility that we have to get them saved or we didn't do the right work. But we have to follow up and we have to have a card and we have to call them so many times. And I do follow up with a lot of people. My phone number, there's 1,000 people I've done outreach for that have my phone number.
Wow.
And I had a text yesterday from somebody from 5 years ago that I prophesied over that wasn't saved then is saved now. And I didn't bring the Lord. So, but it was just one of those moments, but I love how if we can disconnect from false responsibility, how we can just be love in the moment. And we can just be one of the times that God built his love story in that person's life. And if we're anonymous in it and they forget who we were, but they still have the word of the moment, that's more glory to God.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing for me that always stands out that I hear from you and I just hear as you're speaking is you're just present to people. And that is, I think that for a lot of people, they think, well, prophesying or words of knowledge, well, that would be so cool to do. But you're present to them into whatever that is, and you're fully dependent on God. And then the other thing I heard you say that stands out is like for words of knowledge. I mean, it is, I had the word of knowledge that I was given once was literally this: is your name Karen? Yes, my name's Karen, and God's love is all over you.
Yeah.
And it was literally the most meaningful moment of my life. I could not believe that this person, I knew it was God saying, Karen, I know your name. And I love you. I mean, that's all it was. It wasn't like, and you're going to go do this
So
fabulous thing. You're going to be on a podcast and none of that. And yet that was so much more meaningful than anything else you could have said. But what I love is how you said, you know, when you're training people, it's permission to practice. And I feel like there's just not enough communities around. It's like, I want everybody listening, grab all your friends, get them together and say, let's practice. We're going to actually do that on Wednesday morning with our prayer team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. You know, I heard the Lord say while you were talking, confidently yielded. Like you are confident that he's going to show up and you're yielded. And honestly, Shawn, like this is so inspiring to me because I don't love to talk to people on planes. I'm just being honest.
Oh, gosh,
like it's kind of like my time in the sky with Jesus. And I hate to say that, but I mean, it's so inspiring to me.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in ministry too, sometimes you kind of like, okay, well, let's do it when the prayer team's here. And then, you know, like, but what you're doing, I mean, you are more lifestyle evangelism, although we would never call it that.
Well, I will say this though, because I'm encouraged by that, but I will say like this season, especially the pandemic here in LA, although our landscapers and the people who clean our house stuff, I try and pour into them some just because I love people. But I have gone back to my early days of the prophetic, which is, you know, for me, I whiteboard it out and I write down the people I want to see move forward in their life because God broke through in their life. So instead of, I'm not very evangelistic right now, which is okay. And that happens in seasons.
Yeah.
But what I've always had, and I was birthed into the hunger for this is I had a friend who in her life, she always had like 20 of us, and she was a really well-known prophetic lady. She would always call us forward. Every year she contended for a word. She's like, God, I want to see them move forward in your kingdom.
Oh my gosh.
I want something to happen. So I've gone back over the last 3 years and said, God, I'm going to help be one of the people. This is my desire, is to be one of the people in my friends and family's world that calls them higher.
Yes. Wow.
And consistently. So every year that I'm looking for, because if you think about it, like I think of most of my core friends, I've given 9 or 10 messages from God that have helped form them and bring them forward. And they've probably done significant towards me too, because people always give back when they're connected to you that way. And I think of that and I go, wow, it's like the benefit of the gifts in your friends and family circle when it builds your faith, their faith, and builds the story of your future together is amazing. So people who are like, I can't talk to a stranger, I have too much social anxiety. Who you are loving the most is who you will have the most authority with.
Amen.
So and for me, I whiteboarded, here's all the people, my family, friends, all the people, and then some extended people. I'm going to be praying all year, and I check them off when I get the word for them that year.
Wow.
I check them off, not meaning that I won't look anymore, but I'm just like, yes, it happened. And
Shawn,
the last couple of years, I've been able to check off all my people.
I knew she was about to do this. Whiteboard right there.
Exactly.
Be Still Ministry.
Lady in black, lady in green.
I love it. I know. But it's so, I mean, I think this is why we listen to podcasts. It is inspiring, Shawn.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, who are we going to whiteboard?
This is amazing. Shawn, every time we have a birthday, we have a group of us that get together.
I love that.
That's what we do. We do prophetic words at every single birthday. And it's so much fun.
Which is such a more powerful gift than just giving
earrings,
a candle.
I mean,
well, we like both. Let's be real. Karen,
I'm a gift giver too. So I like
all
both
my
too,
friends, you know I like both. Hey, Shawn, listen, we really want to hear about your new book, Encounter.
Please,
I mean, we are all about encounter. So just the word.
If you have time, I'll tell you.
Give us a nutshell.
You know, when people like me are known in the public to any degree, and I have some level of following, a lot of times you get to hear my teaching or you get to see me minister, but you don't know the encounters that form me.
Yes.
And so this book is really the encounters I've had that have formed my theology the way they are, because I'm kind of a outside the box, but still very mainstream conservative Christian, but outside the box in the way we think, because I really believe God had an original intention and design for us that he thought of for the equivalent of eternity for each one of us before we were born on the earth. And Jesus paid a price for all of that. And so I feel like this book Encounter takes us into a hope-filled perspective for the coming move of God.
Yeah.
That there's
yes.
people like Daniel and Esther and Joseph and Solomon are more of what it's going to look like in the end times than maybe a church-centric pastor being anointed and that being where the authority is for the church. And you look at Solomon, and I start out the book with Solomon, where I had this encounter where I'm watching, I didn't know what I was watching at first, but I'm watching a time-lapse video, like vision of the Israel being, created under Solomon's reign, the infrastructure, the agriculture, the school systems, the judicial system, and in the temple. And I'm watching all of these things. And it's the most masterfully built place that brought spiritual and natural tourism from all over the world. It said that the Bible says that people came from all around the world to see as entertainment, basically, what Solomon was building and what the Israelites were doing. And the Queen of Sheba came and said, surely your God's real, and he loves his people because he raised up a man like you. And she began to worship God. So she became a believer of God in that moment. And so I looked at that when the Jewish people, when Jesus came, the Jewish people thought he was going to come like that, building with a master building sense.
Yeah.
But instead, Jesus came humble and built from the inside out, not the outside in.
Yeah.
And so, like in this next generation, though, the end times, because Solomon was more a picture of what we would do, not what Jesus would do.
Yes.
So when I saw this vision of this, I was like, wow, Jesus was going to build the internal kingdom connection to the Father. And therefore, then we could build and see transformation in our outside world.
Yes.
And that's what we're headed towards. So the book starts out there of like, are you ready to have that wisdom, the perceptions of God, to understand how to rule and reign with God? And it's not dominion theology that everything will be taken over before Jesus returns, but it's that we will have a presence to show who God is and how beautiful Jesus is everywhere he can be seen. And so the book takes you on a fabulous journey of some of my own prophetic encounters and some of the things I've lived through in my life. I've never written anything like it, except for maybe a book I have called Keys Heaven's Economy that's based on encounters.
Yeah.
And it's being really well connected to the encounter book is like, I wasn't sure, because it's kind of the stories you tell your friends around dinner, you don't tell the public.
Yes.
And I felt like God said, you need to tell these stories. You need to tell this. So it's been really vulnerable, and I'm hoping it has wings and will fly.
Well, it will. It will with us. We're about to
We're
buy
already
about
buying.
20, 40 of them.
We're already getting everybody to buy 5 books each.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. We're so excited. Well, we can. So can you tell us a little bit about Esther? I mean, I always obviously love her because she's female. And honestly, like, I feel like we are on some level having to be Esther's in this generation. It's like it looks like everybody's dying, and yet we're going to stand up and say no, I mean, what do you write about Esther? I'm so curious.
Well, I didn't write all this in the book because we took out some of the parts of Joseph and Esther and Daniel, and we stayed more on Solomon. But I will say this about Esther: she's in there, like we have her in there. But there's something about Esther that she was an orphan girl, so she wanted a normal, traditional family.
Yeah.
She wanted the Jewish experience.
Yeah.
And her uncle Mordecai got her a job, and then she ended up in the palace in the harem. So it's not a beautiful princess story.
No, it's a tragic story.
But she knew at one point. And Queen Vashti had wounded the king's heart, King Xerxes' heart. So she gets to this place where she realizes, I'm one of many, but this evil man is about to take out my people. And God placed me in my moment of time for his people because he loves them. Mm-hmm. So we never see an encounter with God or a prophetic story that is a verbal story. We see a positional story of a woman who knew that what she wanted isn't what God wanted to give her, because he had a greater outcome for her to be a mother over Israel.
Wow.
And I feel like there's a lot of people in that moment right now where it's not that God's being verbal and saying, well, you have a calling for the nations, but it's saying who you are right now matters and will actually bring a defense to my nuclear family, to my core ideas, to who I am in society, to what I want to be in America. America is not going to have a downfall because Esther's are going to rise up. Mm-hmm. And it's not America's time to end right now. It's actually, America's more like a rebellious teenage daughter and a betrayer than it is a deep, like, prostitute out on the streets. Yeah. And so, like, when you see Esther is being raised up, and I know we're just talking about America, but when we see Esther's raised up, we see people who understand their times and their seasons, that it's significant. It's not because they have this big, like, Jesus comes out of the cloud and tells them. They just have this understanding and knowing that everything that I'm doing right now has significance to the greater purpose of God. Yeah. And it's a promotion. and then it creates great transformation in the world around us. So I think
Yeah.
that that's kind of the season we're going into.
What would you say? I listened Friday to your, if you haven't heard, Shawn went and did a live on 2022 and what you feel like God is doing. It was fascinating. But I was telling Karen, the biggest thing about it is what I heard was that God is giving supernatural creativity, innovation to the kingdom.
Technologies.
Technologies. I mean, that
I think this is the first time
so-
we're going to be the head, not the tail. That we're going to people.
Wow.
If we're not in the kings of some of the mountains, we're going to have people who are Joseph's, Daniel's, Esther's, who are going to be right in there, influencing it, holding the hearts of kings. Because there's something about what God wants to do in virtual space and in technology and with medical technology, transportation, that's going to advance His purpose in a way that no generation's seen before.
Yeah.
And there's a culmination time we're in right now. And before, a lot of people who teach on the end times or whatever, they put fear in us for technology and put fear in us for some of the things that might happen through Elon Musk's chip that goes in the back of your head or through like metaverse or these people put fear in our hearts. But if you understand, what if God has a 15-year container to bring 1 billion people to the Lord, because of Christians who are positioned correctly, and also bring resources that would fund end time harvest because of the technologies that are existing. So we can't be in fear of what God's blessing the earth with right now.
Yeah.
One day the Antichrist or an enemy might own it and say, if you want to, use this, you have to do this, but that's not what's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's a free technology state right now. So we need to operate as Christians without fear, but with the freedom that we're being given through transportation, AI, all these technologies.
Yeah.
And so what was cool is after that particular live that I did, I was contacted by so many innovators and technology companies. I mean, I have to catch up over the next month. So many contacted me and said, we have this artificial intelligence. This is what God spoke to us. We have this new transportation. We're involved with this. We're involved with, it was mind blowing. And I feel like I wanted to spend the whole weekend just calling people back because I was like, I had no idea.
I know.
And I already know. I mean, I've spoken at Google and Apple and Microsoft and all these places to their groups, their small groups, their Christian fellowships, and a lot of Hollywood studios and stuff. So I've spoken in these places, prayed for people, prophesied, built friendship. So I already know the innovation that's out there is spectacular and how many Christians are positioned.
Yeah.
But Friday night, I got a whole new dose. I was like, this is
neat. Shawn, in a culture, I feel like that is so, especially, in the Christian world, we're trained to only see what the enemy's doing and the negative.
I love your redemptive look
and I mean, I've literally never met someone. I mean, you mentioned it on Friday, but it's never your focus.
No.
How have you trained or who have you learned from? Because, and speak to like how you see the enemy at work. I mean, because you don't give him airtime.
Yeah,
That's
I
beautiful.
see the enemy at work in a major. It's really interesting though. Like in the book, I go into something that's the only controversial point of the book is I believe that when we bring agreement between God's original plan and the earth through Jesus's power, through what He did on the cross, that we bind more and more of the demonic activity forever.
Yes.
Unless somebody starts it again and unbinds it, we've bound it. And so I think that, if 1/3 of the angels fell, there's only probably 1/3 of them at work still because the rest of their activity has been bound. So, but there's 2/3 that are filled with the glory of God and operating on assignment from the general, the captain of the army, So I look at like the scenario of this, it's like the enemy looks like all the time, he tries to threaten Christianity and he puts us in check. And then we look at God and we go, you always got checkmate. You always have the next move. It's always checkmate. Like, and we go through seasons, like if you think of the Jesus People movement, which I mentioned with my parents, there's about 15 years where all the churches that were believing about the end times were preaching it was the end.
Yeah.
Because moral corruption and bankruptcy and free love, sexuality, casting off restraint of family, not going, like moving away from nuclear family. Like I think there was only like 8 or 9% nuclear family in 3 or 4 of those years of free love movement, which were there again today. And then God came.
Yeah.
So there was like 10 or 15 years of darkness that you could look at it and go, it's dark. The enemy looks like he's winning, but God trumped it all by bringing a move of His Spirit that was the greatest modern move of revival. 85% of pastors that are pastors in America right now got saved in that time period. I had no idea.
Whoa,
that shows you that the nation turned and that the church turned towards Jesus, and it affected national identity and family identity and all these different structures. I mean, sexuality was being questioned and there was a move of morality like we've never seen before after that. So I feel like if we can believe, the Bible says, in Philippians, focus on what's good, right, noble, pure.
That's right.
And when you focus on those things, then you live in balance. Like it also,
You
Paul
produce the
says to
fruit of
Timothy,
that.
I've given
Mhm.
you a spirit, not of fear, but of power
Yeah.
and of sound-mindedness. And we can't be sound-minded when we're afraid.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Oh gosh, so good.
Okay, we have just a few more minutes, but real fast, will you just speak to deliverance? It's an area that, a fourth of Jesus's ministry was deliverance, of casting out demons. And I feel like the church has just shied so hardcore away from this. And it's something that we really
Well, it's funny because I've been following Apostle Catherine Crook.
Yeah.
And I know that
She's
you
great.
have been really just kind of, in fact, we've tried to reach out for a podcast. So there's a little plug for that. But yeah, what do you say about that? Because you were fascinated enough that you took your cameras down there.
Oh yeah. And there's a bunch of other deliverance ministries emerging like her. I think she's the most prolific one we see because she moves in a lot of healing, deliverance, and prophecy. Kind of like a modern day Catherine Coleman, but just, emerging. She's 30 years old. She's so young.
Yeah.
But there's several other people I've had the opportunity to talk to and spend time with. And we have Jenna Winston on our team and friendship circle, who was Bethel's pastor of deliverance. And Jenna's amazing because she'll get with somebody who normally they would manifest like almost like the movies demons.
Yeah.
But because Jenna has so much authority and understanding, she's helping them to embrace the truth of who Jesus is.
Yes.
And so the demonic gets subdued or gets, like subpoenaed, so to speak. So I feel like, here's the deal. We are in a generation where so many of the issues that are going on are spiritually rooted, and we have to break the strongholds.
Yeah.
So because we're so far behind in some areas of God's plan,
right?
What happens is when you break the spiritual oppression, everything can kind of rubber band back
I agree.
to where it's supposed to be. So we've seen this sometimes in some of your own lives who are listening or watching. It's like, that there's an area that God brought you forward in that would have taken 10 years of counseling, but it happened in 3 months or 2 deliverance sessions. Well, society is like that right now. We have strongholds that need to be broken. And the beautiful thing that Jesus showed was you are not limited generationally to your father's sin.
That's right.
You are not limited to what your sin is. You're not limited to the enemy's corruption. You're not limited to a corrupt government. You are limited to the kingdom of God. So there's going to be displays of the goodness of the love of God for patterns that could not be broken out of families or out of society, where God comes and does a showdown.
Yeah.
And to me, the deliverance is such a beautiful showdown to us individually when it happens to us, where we see God overpower something that we just couldn't overcome, no matter how many tools we got. I mean, you think of the average drug addict, I believe, I might be wrong and misquoting, but it's like this, goes to rehab 7 times before they
seven.
quit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, that's, and we have the most addiction in America right now that we've had in like 20 something years.
Yeah.
Because of coronavirus and pandemic. I know other countries have similar stuff. So I look at that and go, okay, what happens when you go not through, and I love the 12 steps. I love programs and models that help bring freedom. So this is not an anti that.
No.
But what happens when God delivers you in a moment where he takes the identity off of you and the addiction away from you?
Yeah.
Because it was a spirit living through you, a wrong nature that was not God's nature for you.
Oh,
and so what happens when he does that? Or when there's this spiritual influence? And I know we've had times like when all of a sudden you've had a season of fear or anxiety and this is empowered more than what you're normally capable of. It's not just your circumstances and you can't get free from it. And then you get prayer from somebody. It doesn't have to be somebody who's famous or known for this. You get prayer from somebody and the spirit of fear breaks off your life. And then when it tries to come back, you recognize and go, that's spirit.
That's right.
I'm not letting it back in. So we need to be aware of the spiritual realm. And I think that deliverance is going to be one of the signposts that marks the next great move of God.
Oh man, we so agree.
Yeah, we're kind of experiencing that
we
over
are
here in our neck of the woods. And it's just, I think God's really highlighting it for us so we can have our eyes open. But I love what you said. Your emphasis is on agreeing with heaven. And I love that.
Identity too.
Well, Shawn, we have loved absolutely every last minute of
I know, but can you pray?
Yeah. Do you mind praying for all the listeners?
Are you kidding? It's my favorite thing to do. It's more important than what I'm saying.
It's awesome.
Okay. So God, I pray for everyone who's listening. Thank you for all the hungry hearts. And we pray, Jesus, that you don't lead us to a place of this kind of spiritual hunger without filling us. And some people who are listening are saying, God, I'm almost giving up. I'm so hungry, but I'm not seeing the fullness. I'm not seeing the release of gifts, the release of deliverance, the release of your voice, that that I feel like you've led me to believe. I'm telling you, stick in for just one more minute. Just stay for one more season and you're going to see the breakthrough. Blessed are the hungry, for they will be filled. And God's going to fill you up. And I pray, God, for a new measure of gifting, a new measure of anointing, a new measure of your presence, a new measure of understanding for your Bible. Lord, give us a hunger for the word. I pray that we would hear stories like we've been talking about today that would just incite us for hunger for our people, for our family, for our friends. And God, that you would give us just the perseverance in this hunger to get the result, the food, the filling from the hunger that's coming, and just the next around the next corner, I guess. And Jesus, I thank you for the tools that are out there. Thank you that I've been able to release this book Encounter. There's so many other tools like this podcast. Would you fill our lives with all the tools that would grow us best, in Jesus' name?
Yeah.
Amen. Thank you, Shawn.
Shawn,
what
we
a
so
treat.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thanks
so
for inviting me.
much.
I'm so glad to be on.
What a gift.
We bless you. We're going to come out to LA and come see you.
Do it. We'll do something.
We're going to
out
make sure our name's on the whiteboard. We've got to come.
here. You're coming to the office and write it on.
There it is. There it is.
We love you.
My
Thanks so
goodness.
much.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it. And tell Sheree hello.
Bless you guys.
Yeah, take
Bless
care.
you too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.